So, friends, now a very significant aspect of business communication is going to be touched by this last section of chapter 1. This is all about ethics, ethical communication. Let's understand what is this ethics, what is this ethical communication, and so on. So, this is committing to ethical and legal communication. What is ethics? Ethics are accepted principles of conduct that govern behavior within a society. You should behave in a particular fashion. You should say this, you shouldn't say this. Okay? Ethical communication includes all relevant information, and that information should be true in every sense. All relevant information is true in every sense. 2, does not violate the rights of others. And 3, is not deceptive in any ways. So few parameters are there. 1, relevant. 2, it should be true. 3, should not violate the right of others. And 4, should not be deceptive. If all the 4 parameters are there, then yeah, very easily you can say it's ethical communication. So, what is unethical? Unethical is plagiarism. Means you are claiming a content to be created by you, which was not created by you, but created by someone else. This is something known as plagiarism. This is unethical. Second part is omitting information. Deliberately, intently, or unintentionally. If the relevant information, now you know relevance. You should give the relevant information. If relevant information is not being made available, then this is omitting information. This is something known as unethical communication. Thirdly, selective misquoting. You're not sharing the entire piece of information, but quoting a part of it, which is going to mislead the other person. This is also unethical. And fourth one is misrepresenting numbers. Numbers may help us in so many ways to decide a particular thing, but if not quoted in perspective, then they'll mislead us. So, if you are quoting certain numbers which are not giving true picture, then this is unethical. The visuals are being distorted. We have seen, we have experienced this. The faces are being, changed of a photograph and so on. So this is distorting visuals, and this is also unethical. And finally, if something is going to violate privacy and security issues of the organization or individual, then that is also being treated as unethical. What may be treated as ethical lapse and ethical dilemma? This is really very interesting to know. Whenever you are communicating with someone, you may be having multiple options. One option is seemingly perfect option at the moment. Another option may not be up to that much appropriate, but is also appropriate. Tomorrow, the second alternative which was not appropriate, will become appropriate. This we have all experienced and seen. So, it's a dilemma. How much should I share? What should I share? With whom? When? Etc. etc. But lapse is folly on my part. I have not done something which I was required to do. So let's understand more. What's ethical dilemma? Choosing from among conflicting alternatives. We have conflicting alternatives. This is something known as ethical dilemma. I have 2 or more alternatives. Now I am not in a position to understand which alternative should be selected by me. This is dilemma. And then what is lapse? Making a choice that is clearly unethical, maybe intentionally or unintentionally. This is something known as ethical lapse. Three elements are there to ensure ethical business communication. One is policies and structures of the organization. You must understand the structure and the policies of the organization and respond accordingly. What are you allowed to share? How much you are allowed to share? With whom you are allowed to share? At what point of time you are allowed to share? And so on and so forth. So, you will be having a lot of policies and structures to communicate or share the piece of information with others. One, fundamental, basic thing. Now, after understanding this part, you should also understand the company leadership, what they are expecting you to do, what should be done from the point of view of the leadership of the company. And the third is the individual employee. This I'll do, this I'll not do. So, three elements are there. If all the three elements are alert, aligned, designed, trained in a particular fashion, in an ethical manner, then obviously we'll be in a position to save ourselves, organizations, from unethical communication.
Communication ethics. How to make good choices when your choices aren't clear. Every business communicator encounters situations that require ethical decision-making. How can you be sure that you're making the right choice whenever you face one of these challenges? By following this 4-step approach, you can be more confident that you're making the best possible choices, even in the most difficult circumstances. First, understand the kind of choice you're making. Not all ethical decisions are the same, as you'll see in a moment. Second, identify the information your audience needs. Third, craft a message that conveys this information clearly and respectfully. Fourth, after you send the message, evaluate the outcome and respond as needed. Let's take a closer look at each step. The first step is to recognize whether you are facing an ethical dilemma or a potential ethical lapse. An ethical lapse occurs when you make communication choices that deprive audience members of the information they need in order to make an informed decision or take an informed stance on an issue. For example, if you lie on your resume or tell a customer you can finish a project by a particular date when you know you can't, you are committing an ethical lapse. Whenever you communicate in business, you ask audiences to trust that you will provide information that is complete, true, and not deceptive in any way. If you intentionally violate that trust, you have committed an ethical lapse. The choice regarding ethical lapses is simple. Don't do it. Unlike ethical lapses, ethical dilemmas are usually much more difficult to navigate because your choices are not so clear-cut. With an ethical dilemma, you might have 2 or more options that are ethically valid or equally unpleasant, or that pit the interests of one party against the interests of another. Let's say you're the CEO of a company that is in financial trouble. You are in secret merger talks with another company. If the merger is completed, it will save your employees jobs. If it doesn't, you're almost certain your company will go under and everyone will lose their jobs. The talks will last another 2 months, and right now, there's no way to know if they will succeed. Should you explain the situation to your employees so they can start looking for other jobs during the talks, just in case? However, if too many employees leave within the 2-month period, the other company will pull out of the deal, and everyone who is still with your company will lose their jobs. You clearly have a dilemma. Should you explain the situation to your employees so they can start looking for other jobs during the talks, just in case? However, if too many employees leave, the other company will pull out of the deal, and everyone who is still with your company will lose their jobs. Dilemmas like this are among the toughest decisions that business people ever have to make. because there is no easy answer, and every option has a downside. To resolve dilemmas like these, go back to the definition of ethical communication, which is giving people the information they need to make an informed choice or develop an informed stance on an issue. In the case of the employees whose jobs are at risk, many are undoubtedly going about with their lives on the assumption that their jobs are secure, and they don't need to be looking for alternatives or preparing for change. However, their jobs are not secure, and they don't have the information they need to develop an informed stance on the matter. One possible solution to this dilemma is to share the information you have with your employees. Let them know that the company is in trouble and you're doing everything you can to save their jobs. But ask employees to help in this effort by staying with the company until the merger talks are concluded. They can prepare to leave by exploring job opportunities, updating their resumes, adjusting their finances, and so on. But ask them to consider staying for the good of the company and their colleagues. This way, if the merger talks fail and the company goes under, employees are ready to move and won't be blindsided by the company's collapse. Again, there are no easy ways out of dilemmas like this one. But if you have given people the information they need, you have made the most ethical choice possible. Once you have decided what to tell your audience, the next step is to decide how to express it. Recognize that your ethical work is not done yet. When you have bad news to share, it can be tempting to downplay it in order to minimize the emotional trauma for you and your audience. In the case of the company whose jobs are at risk, you might be tempted to soften the blow by avoiding difficult truths or by putting a false positive spin on negative news. Being sensitive to your audience's emotions is important, but don't go so far that you avoid telling the truth. And with persuasive messages, there is a risk of overselling your message and slipping into hype or puffery. If you're pitching your new invention to investors with the claim that it will change the world, chances are you're overselling it. Be sure you can support every claim you make. With all types of messages, don't resort to emotional manipulation. If you create advertising for children's products that suggests parents would be uncaring or irresponsible not to buy them, you may have slipped over the line into manipulation. The final step in this process is to evaluate the outcome of your messages and respond as needed. This won't be necessary or even possible in every situation. But for high-impact messages that affect people's lives, try to verify that your message got through. For example, if you sell a potentially dangerous product that must be used in a specific way in order to be safe, you can survey your customers to make sure they understand the directions you provided. You can also monitor social media and customer support exchanges if the communication is external, or check in with employees if the communication is internal, to see if your audiences could benefit from reminders or clarifications. By taking these 4 steps, whenever you're faced with a communication dilemma, you can be more confident that you have taken all facets of the situation into consideration and that you are communicating in a way that fulfills your ethical responsibilities as a communicator.
Friends, it's obvious with the help of this movie that in any situation, what should we do? 1. Define the situation. Have you defined the situation well? Are you in a position to understand the nuances of the situation? Alternatives you have within the environment. 1. 2. Why are you communicating? Do you have any need to communicate? Can you avoid this communication? If you can't avoid, then why are you communicating? You are communicating to pacify, to solicit, to advise, to recommend, etc., etc. Understand this and then communicate. 3rd, what will be the impact of your message? What impact will your message have? So you need to understand that if you will say something, then what other party will do on the basis of this piece of information shared by you. What good or harm will be achieved. Now, if it's going to be, say, really beneficial, maybe go ahead. If it's not going to be beneficial for both the parties, then there is a caution. See, what should you do? Will your assumptions change? Today you are thinking that this is right. Tomorrow, if you are getting another piece of information or you are being educated with something else, then the entire premise will change. Then obviously you have to understand this part of the situation also. And finally, are you comfortable with the decision? If you are comfortable, fine. If you are not comfortable, then check. So friends, this was all about the making ethical choices.